Caitlin Clark has added pressure to the March 10th date for the WNBA CB talk and added pressure to the WNBA to get a deal done.
In high-stakes negotiations, there is a clear psychological difference between an ordinary deadline and a calculated financial ultimatum. For months, mainstream sports media framed the WNBA collective bargaining dispute as a routine disagreement over revenue sharing, suggesting that the players' union held the upper hand due to public momentum and the cultural impact of Caitlin Clark. The narrative claimed that team owners urgently needed future season revenue and would eventually concede under pressure. However, behind closed doors where financial realities drive decisions, ownership has reportedly adopted a far more strategic and uncompromising approach aimed at testing the unity of the union. Rather than continuing standard negotiations, the league appears to be leveraging timing, logistics, and public attention to intensify pressure, using the spotlight surrounding Clark not as protection for the players but as added urgency in the talks. What may seem like a distant seasonal deadline is, in practice, complicated by operational demands that create earlier decision points, making the situation far more serious for everyone involved. The league has now presented a firm position that effectively serves as a decisive ultimatum, raising the stakes and reshaping the entire negotiation landscape.
Delivered a stark ultimatum to the players' union. A deal must be reached by March 10th if the season is to start on time, according to a
March 10 has been set as the decisive cutoff, not as a scare tactic but as the point where organizing a professional season becomes nearly impossible. Within the WNBA, more than 80% of players are currently unrestricted free agents, leaving rosters largely unfilled. At the same time, two new expansion franchises in Toronto and Portland have paid significant entry fees yet still have no finalized lineups. In less than 2 months, the league would need to conduct an expansion draft, manage widespread free agency moves, complete the collegiate draft, open training camps, and schedule preseason games, none of which can proceed without a ratified collective bargaining agreement. Without clarity on the salary cap, contract rules, and roster regulations, transactions simply cannot happen. League officials have indicated that failing to reach a deal by the deadline could delay the season, disrupt arena bookings, and jeopardize player salaries. Beyond setting a firm date, ownership is reportedly applying a high-pressure tactic often described as an exploding offer, where financial terms worsen over time to create urgency. Former MLB executive David Samson has publicly explained how this strategy increases pressure by gradually reducing incentives if a deal is not signed quickly. Such an approach shifts the psychological dynamic from a direct standoff with owners to a race against time, particularly affecting players who rely primarily on league salaries rather than outside endorsements. As each day potentially brings less favorable terms, internal tension can grow within a union, testing solidarity and intensifying the push to finalize an agreement before the offer diminishes further.
But no revenue sharing movement. If you do not accept this deal by that day, every day following,
the statement about punishment reflects a hardline mindset often seen in high-level labor disputes, where ownership views timing and leverage as tools of control rather than collaboration. While public narratives frequently describe the WNBA as a partnership built on shared growth, critics argue that team owners ultimately operate from a business-first perspective, treating the league as a commercial investment and players as contractual assets within that system. Much of the current tension centers on the enormous spotlight surrounding Caitlin Clark and expectations for her upcoming season, which many see as a pivotal financial and cultural moment for the league. Some believe the players' union assumed that the league would avoid any risk that could jeopardize such momentum, while ownership has instead used the urgency of the moment to increase pressure for a resolution. By establishing a firm deadline, league executives are signaling a willingness to delay operations if terms are not met, effectively shifting public scrutiny onto the union if progress stalls. Analysts such as former MLB executive David Sampson have noted that in corporate negotiations, deadlines and ultimatums only work if they are enforced. Failing to follow through can permanently weaken management's credibility. As a result, both sides face significant strategic risk, with financial, reputational, and operational consequences tied directly to whether a binding agreement is reached in time.
I love that strategy. I used it with players all the time. You don't want to agree right now? Your next offer is lower.
If leadership issues an ultimatum without the willingness to enforce it, credibility disappears instantly, which is why the March 10th deadline has become such a pivotal moment for the WNBA. Ownership has made it clear that it will not meet higher revenue-sharing demands it considers financially unsustainable, nor will it extend negotiations beyond the operational window required to launch a season. By taking such a firm stance, owners are signaling that they are prepared to accept short-term disruption rather than compromise what they view as long-term financial structure. Much of the pressure revolves around the extraordinary commercial momentum tied to
Have to follow through. Because if your child, your partner, your parent, the people with whom you work, the people against whom you negotiate, the agents, if they all believe
Caitlin Clark, whose presence has significantly elevated attention and revenue expectations. The central strategic question is whether employing a time-sensitive, deteriorating offer strengthens management's leverage by creating urgency within the union, or whether it risks damaging trust, public perception, and the league's growth. At a critical cultural moment, ultimately, the outcome may depend on how unified the players remain if financial uncertainty intensifies, and whether both sides calculate that compromise now is less costly than prolonged conflict later.